Hello everyone, welcome to this course and our focus will be on defining the core concepts of international relations. My name is Esther Temilola and I'm thrilled to share this journey with you. In this course, we will discuss the essential and core concepts that surrounds the field of international relations. Join me as we explore these ideas together in order to gain a deeper understanding of the world around us. So let's get started. In this slide, we will briefly discuss international relations as a course before going into the details on the core concepts of international relations. It is very important to understand international relations because the world is becoming more global. So what is international relations? International relations refers to the study of interactions and the exchanges between different actors on the world stage. The different actors could be state actors, non-state actors such as international organizations, non-governmental organizations, multinational corporations, and even individuals. Defining international relations helps to understand fundamental things about the nature of power and cooperation in the global stage. So generally, international relations refers to the interactions between states across national boundaries. So now that we have a sense of what international relations entails, let's identify the key concepts of international relations. These concepts are the building blocks of international relations and will serve as the foundation for our discussion of this topic. So basically, the key concepts of international relations include sovereignty, diplomacy, national interest, power, globalization, interdependence, international organizations, state and non-state actors. These concepts are important to understand the complex nature of international relations. And in the following slides, we will focus on each of these concepts and we discuss them in details. We will focus on their meanings and their significance. Let's discuss sovereignty as a core concept of international relations. And with this, we'll begin with the meaning and definition of sovereignty. Simply put, sovereignty refers to the supreme authority of a state over its territory, its population, and its internal affairs. It is the power of a state to make laws, to enforce laws, and to regulate relations with other states. It is also the power of a state to maintain and ensure internal order within its territory. Now let's discuss the different types of sovereignty that we have in international relations. There is the internal sovereignty, which mainly refers to a state authority within its own territory. We also have external sovereignty, and this refers to a state independence and the recognition of a state by other states of the world. There are also several aspects of sovereignty, and we have the territorial sovereignty, which basically has to do with state control over its own territory. There is the personal sovereignty, which refers to an individual autonomy and self-governance. When getting knowledge of sovereignty as a concept of international relations, it is very necessary to know that despite the importance of sovereignty, sovereignty as a concept faces several challenges and has its own limitations. Some of these limitations and challenges of sovereignty include globalization, international law, and even human rights. All these challenges can limit a state's sovereignty. Beyond this, the rise of non-state actors such as multinational corporations, terrorist organizations can also erode a state's sovereignty. Taking globalization as an instance, this means that states are not self-sufficient and they need to continue depending on other states for economic reasons such as trade. A state cannot produce everything on its own, which means that such states have to engage in a form of trade exchange and trade relations with many other states. Also, we see that international organizations that states have joined have the tendency to limit the sovereignty of a state, which is another challenge of the sovereignty of a state. When states are members of international organizations, there are rules and regulations that states have to abide to as members of such international organization, which can limit the supreme power that a state should have. This gives us a curiosity that despite the challenges of a state sovereignty, why is sovereignty still an important and core concept of international relations? Sovereignty is very important despite its challenges because it provides a state with the authority to protect its citizens, to maintain its territorial integrity, and to pursue its national interests. So as a core concept of international relations, sovereignty is very important and the knowledge of sovereignty gives you a deeper understanding of international relations. Now to the next slide. In this slide, we will be discussing diplomacy as a vital concept of international relations. And here, diplomacy refers to the official interactions between representatives of different states or international organizations. It involves the use of negotiation and persuasion to achieve foreign policy objectives, to resolve conflicts, and to promote national interests. So we ask, what tools and techniques do diplomats use to achieve their goals? Some of these tools include negotiation, mediation, arbitration, as well as persuasion. Diplomats use various forms of communication such as paying official visits, attending summits, and much more. These are the tools through which diplomacy is ensured among states, making sure that diplomacy is a key concept of international relations. Because through diplomatic representatives, states interact. There are also different diplomatic immunities and privileges that diplomats enjoy. These immunities and privileges are very important in order to ensure that diplomats have a smooth functioning of diplomatic relations. And there are various immunities and exemptions that diplomats get, which also forms a part of interaction between states. Diplomacy is a core concept of international relations because it helps to ensure a continuous interaction among states. And through diplomats, countries can interact and share their foreign policy ideas among one another. Now let's discuss another key concept, which is national interest. And this is the driving force behind the state's foreign policy decisions. We will examine the definition of national interest. What is national interest? National interest refers to the long-term goals and objectives that a state seeks to achieve in its interaction with other states. This interest of a state can be categorized into different types, including the security interest, economic interest of a state, the political interest, the cultural interest, and much more. National interest plays a very crucial role in shaping a state's foreign policy decisions. And policymakers of a state must actually weigh the potential benefits and the costs of different policy options, and then they choose the one that best align with their state's national interests. So how do states pursue their national interests in practice? For example, looking at the United States has a national interest in maintaining its military presence in the Asia Pacific region. And the aim of this United States in the Asian region is to counterbalance China's growing influence, because it is no news that China has a large economic power and there is an increasing competition between China and the United States. So for the United States to still continue its hegemonic power of the world, its national interest in the Asian region will be to maintain its military presence and increase its economic activities. Also, in the same vein, we have the European Union having a national interest in promoting economic integration and cooperation among its member states in order to enhance their collective economic competitiveness. So then we ask that how do states pursue their interests and how does this interest actually benefit them? So states pursue their national interests through different means. This could be through diplomacy, through economic coercion, that is the use of force, through military power, through international institutions, and through different other means. States also develop alliances, they enter into alliances to pursue their national interests. States sign treaties, they develop rivalries and dependencies just to achieve their goals. This means that the effective pursuit of national interest requires a deep understanding of the global environment. It requires a careful planning and a strategic decision making of a state. So national interest is a basic concept of international relations because it allows states to interact with one another to achieve their goals. In this slide, we will discuss power as a concept of international relations and a core concept at that. So to define power, we can say power is the ability to influence and shape the behavior of others. So now we ask, what is power in the context of international relations? In the context of international relations, power refers to the ability of a state to achieve its goals and objectives through various means, including coercion, which is force, persuasion, and influence. Power is the capacity to shape the behavior of others and to achieve desired outcomes. So there are several types of power in international relations. And the first one we'll talk about is the military power. Military power refers to the ability of a state to use force in achieving its goals. This means that a state achieves its goals through the use of armed forces, military interventions, and strategic alliances. For example, the United States has a large military power, and the United States has used this military power to intervene in different conflicts in the world. Conflicts that have occurred in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Iran, and other countries. The United States has also made use of its military power to maintain its strategic presence in the Asia Pacific region. Another example of the use of military power was done by Russia as a country when there was the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014. Russia used its military might to seize control and annex the Crimean Peninsula, and this demonstrates its ability to project power and achieve its strategic objectives through military means. Another type of power is the economic power. An economic power is the ability of a state to use its economic resources to influence others. And this includes trade agreements, economic sanctions, foreign investments, and so much more. Looking at China, for example, China has used its economic power to become a major player in global trade and to invest heavily in the infrastructure projects across Asia and Africa. There have also been cases where the United States used economic sanctions against Iran. This is an example of economic power in actions. The economic sanctions, which target Iran's oil exports and financial sector, were done to pressure Iran to renegotiate its nuclear deal with the international community. Another important type of power in international relations is smart power. This refers to the combination of hard and soft power to achieve desired outcomes. For example, the European Union response to the Ukraine crisis in 2014 is an example of smart power in action. The European Union used a combination of economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and even military assistance to support Ukraine and to deter Russia's aggression in Crimea. So when discussing power as a concept in international relations, it's important to point out the roles that international institutions play in shaping power dynamics. International institutions such as the United Nations, the European Union, the World Trade Organizations, they all play a crucial role in shaping power dynamics in international relations. These institutions can actually provide a framework for cooperation and competition among states, and they can influence the distribution of power among states. These international institutions can also help to provide a platform for smaller states to exert their influence and shape global outcomes. So basically, this is an overview of power as a concept of international relations. Now let's talk on globalization as a core concept of international relations. What is globalization? Globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness of the world's economies, societies, and cultures. It basically involves the free flow of goods, the free flow of services, ideas, and people across borders. And this is facilitated by the advancements in technology, transportation, and communication. So it is important to know that there are both positive and negative effects of globalization, especially in international relations. For the positive effects, globalization has brought many benefits, including increased economic growth, it has brought job creation, access to new markets, and even technology. Globalization has also facilitated the exchange of ideas, of cultures, values, has promoted global understanding and cooperation. However, with all these positive effects of globalization, globalization has also brought about its downsides, which are the negative effects. For instance, globalization has brought about an increased income inequality, especially among states. It has brought about job displacement, cultural homogenization, and it has even created new challenges for nation states, including the loss of sovereignty, the spread of diseases, looking at COVID-19 pandemic that occurred, and threat of global terrorism. So we asked, how do nation states respond to the challenges of globalization? This is a very crucial question because states must balance their desire for economic growth and integration with the need to protect their sovereignty and cultural identity. So for states to respond to the challenges of globalization, it requires careful management of trade policies such as tariffs and quotas. This means that states must know how to manage immigration laws and various other things that will not infringe on their sovereignty and their international relations with other states. What are then the future trends of globalization? With this, we mean, what does the future hold for globalization? So we can say that the future trend suggests that globalization will continue to deepen and to broaden due to the growing advancements in technology, the growth of emerging markets, and due to the increasing importance of global governance. But with an awareness of the future trend of globalization, the need to understand the concept of globalization in international relations is very important. Having talked about globalization, we move to the next slide, which is interdependence as a core concept of international relations. So generally, interdependence refers to the mutual reliance of states on each other for economic, political, and even security benefits. It is the awareness of states that there is a necessity to mutually depend on one another for economic and security purposes. So how do we measure interdependence among states? One crucial way is to examine the level of foreign investment in a state economy. When we look at the number of foreign investments and foreign companies that is existent in a particular state, it is easy to measure how dependent such a state is. We can also measure interdependence by knowing the number of international agreements and the treaties that a state has signed with other states. In today's interconnected world, it is very impossible for states to be completely self-sufficient, which takes us to the impossibility of self-sufficiency. Even the most powerful states, they rely on other states for certain things. They rely on other states for economic purposes. They rely on other states for different ideas in the world. So basically, we say, for example, the United States relies on other states for oil or imports, and China relies on other states for technology imports. So what this does is that interdependence creates a kind of mutual vulnerability among states, because states know that they have to depend on one another for things that they do not have in their own states. But looking at the positive side of this, interdependence largely allows for cooperation and mutual benefit among states, because states knows that since they are dependent on one another, there is a need for them to cooperate. So what are the economic benefits of interdependence for states? One benefit is increased trade and investment, which can lead to economic growth and job creation. Another benefit is that states can have access to new markets and technologies, which can help them to diversify rather than being monocultural in nature. By being interdependent on one another, there is an increased economic efficiency that will be attained among states. So a broad understanding of interdependence as a core concept of international relations is very, very important. Another core concept of international relations that will be discussed is international organization. And international organizations are the backbone of global governance. And here we'll be discussing the roles, the functions, and the type of international organizations that we have, as well as their usefulness to states. So what are the roles and functions of international organizations? International organizations play a crucial role in promoting peace and security and in promoting cooperation among states. There are various functions, and some of them include that international organizations help in providing humanitarian aid to states that are in need of such aid. They also promote economic development and help to resolve conflict. For example, looking at the United Nations as an international organization, it provides a platform for states to discuss and address global issues. So now what are the types of international organizations? There are majorly three types of international organizations, and we have the non-governmental organizations, which are the NGOs, that is the non-profitable organizations that operate independently of governments. We also have the IGOs, which are the intergovernmental organizations, such as the United Nations, the European Unions. They are mostly comprised of governments. And then lastly, we have the INGOs, which are the international non-governmental organizations. So how useful are international organizations to states? They are very, very useful to states in several ways. They provide a platform for states to address common challenges and opportunities. They promote economic development, and they also enhance their global influence. For instance, being a member in the World Trade Organization, which is the WTO, provides states with access to new markets and trade opportunity. In the same vein, states who are members of the Non-Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is NATO, give states the opportunity to have collective defense and security guarantees. So despite the usefulness of international organization, they could face several challenges, which are challenges in decision making, funding challenges, particularly for organizations that rely on voluntary contributions from member states, and their decision making processes could be slow. But despite these challenges, we see that international organizations are very useful to states, and they are core concepts of how states interact amongst themselves. So lastly, we talk about state and non-state actors as a core concept of international relations. And we know that state and non-state actors are the key players in the international system. State actors generally refers to sovereign states that have a defined territory, they have population and government, while non-state actors on the other hand refers to entities that are not states but still have an impact on international relations. So what are the key features and characteristics of a state? You know that for a state to be recognized as a state, such state must have sovereignty, must have a territorial integrity, must have population, government, and must be recognized by other states. And then we say some examples of non-state actors in the international system. We have international organizations like the United Nations, the European Union, and other non-governmental organizations. And we know that the states and non-state actors have various roles that they play in the international system. They help to maintain international peace and security, they promote economic development, and so much more humanitarian aid that they give out. So yes, state and non-state actors are definitely a key concept of international relations because they are key players in the international system. So thank you for joining me through a discussion on the core concepts of international relations. Be sure to check out other videos on international relations and global politics. And don't forget to subscribe to Mastering Up YouTube channel for more informative and engaging content. Thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next video.